if they're doing it under the stealing the narrative of AI, and again, the last 7 minutes we've talked about the wallet, Apple Wallet. It won't even need a rebrand. It already exists. The magic trick there of all of a sudden inside of that wallet, and my little card pops up. It looks like a credit card. It sounds like a credit card. It smells like a credit card, and it works like one too. I can buy anything with it. And what's on the back end doesn't really matter. They're not going to call it crypto. Apple will steal the blockchain narrative. There's a big prediction. I'll make that a 2 to 4 year prediction that here in 2024, I think by the time you get to 2028, that narrative will have been stolen by Apple, and that whole conversation around crypto, blockchain, NFTs, it'll just be Apple Wallet.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
Yeah, I got a lot of big feelings I need to unpack, especially because I feel like we've been on the forefront of calling some of these big moves. And we talked about, a little AI in a couple of weeks previous, but we haven't had a chance to really unpack the big announcements coming out of Cupertino and Apple trying to steal the narrative, I think. And I think we called it.
I
AI.
think
What's AI
Apple
to you?
has successfully stolen the narrative. Last week, Apple Intelligence, WWDC, the overall fever pitch of artificial intelligence. You're coming off the heels of Google. We covered the Gemini, the multimodal. I saw some news out of Microsoft just today that they're rescinding the recall piece, which was like, they're backing off of their automatic recording of everything that you do on your screen. And what did Apple talk about at WWDC? They talked about privacy. They leaned in to the secure enclave, on-device computing, the secure cloud, even of like when we do have to send it to a cloud. And maybe I don't know how much down these rabbit holes you went, but they're talking about this sort of private cloud infrastructure that almost like spins up a little private cloud server just to process my data at just the right time and pull it back down without it ever being exposed in any other format.
Oh yeah, I mean, the folks out of Cupertino are the tip of their spear starts with family, children, privacy, protection. It's all the words that makes most Americans straighten up their spine and start to think a little bit about, wait, I do want to think a little bit more thoughtfully, intentionally, to use the terms that are so overwrought, but they want to be intentional about when they hand a connected device to their child or they strap it onto their wrist. They understand exactly the limitations and the kind of rails that they create in order to protect that individual online. And they're steering into that. Like you just said, Google having to take back, Microsoft taking back statements.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys have been trying to film you with the Xbox the iCam. They were recording your living room 24/7. It's a classic example. And so I think about all that, secure enclave, but the part that's really interesting and you and I know is, look, I've been in enterprise software now on some way, shape, or form for decades. Maybe more enterprise recently than before, but eventually you get to a place where you're very enterprise. And you and I know that if you spin up Amazon Web Services servers, that you can create these what are called virtual instances. And this is how companies create servers around the world to deliver information, deliver web pages, to deliver data off of CDNs quickly to you because they have it at the edge on some cloud nearby you. The edge servers, right? So now we're taking the exact same model. Like everyone has this idea that the cloud is just up there and moving data around. And when you say, do I want to store some photos in iCloud? And you have to kind of figure that out as an Apple consumer. Like, well, I guess I do. It's Apple's thing. It's called iCloud. I don't want it on my phone. So, okay. But you don't really know what that means. It's in a place. Is it private? Probably not. There's probably commingled photos and videos of other Apple customers in your area. So now they're just saying, okay, there's a thing called private servers that exist in the enterprise world. Because if you're a business and your customer is Coca-Cola and you have the good fortune of bringing on another customer called PepsiCo, then you have to keep their data separate. There's all these insane regulatory bodies that monitor this, right? You have to do SOC 2 reports and all these antiquated tests from third parties to prove the data is not commingled. Where you heard those words, FTX, commingling funds, everyone else is commingled. So now all they have to do is say, there's a private cloud. It's your little private slice of this cloud. Is it really private?
Look, what's interesting, you just talked about commingling. And so I'm going down the rabbit hole here. I'm looking at what else is Apple talking about. This is from 2 hours ago, from 9 to 5 Mac, of Apple discontinuing Apple Pay Later ahead of new features launching this fall. And so this is we've talked about Apple and the payment industry for a long time. When Apple Pay got introduced more than a decade ago, I mean, it's been like 10 years that Apple has been building their wallet infrastructure and partnering with all the banks and figuring this out. And the Goldman Sachs, the high yield savings account, and now all of a sudden they're going down this AI path, this data, this virtual private servers, this we are your virtual co-pilot. And seems like somebody might be telling them, okay, if you guys are going to go down that hardware software path, I need you to get out of this banking side of things. This pay now later makes you guys a lender. And now I can't have you be doing that with the right hand and this with the left hand, because that would not be good to be commingling your data with people who owe you money. Right? Like, think about that. Like,
that's interesting.
All of a sudden you're in debt with your Apple Pay Later, and now my Apple iCloud is locked until I pay out my debt. I don't know. I'm making this up, but to me, that commingling of now you've got to get in your lane and do what Apple wants to do, and that means you got to cut some of these other services.
Well, and so the commingling is a word that we've heard now for years, because that's when you have funds in these exchanges that get commingled. So that if someone were to say, like, why is that dangerous? Well, it's dangerous because if someone's to say, I would like to when Tom Brady says, I need all of my money out right now, the answer is, oh, well, we can't, because we kind of commingled your money with some other money and then put it over here and staked it to do this and get some interest in the thing. So we're going to need some amount of time to do that. So similarly, I've been in the situation when you have a company that you work with who have competitors. And, let's say it's in gaming. And gaming, of course, is one of those environments that is very competitive and everyone is very secretive and there's embargoes, and it's really important that information is never commingled or shared or whatever. And then one of the companies calls you, let's say it's Ubisoft, right? And you work with Ubisoft and you work with EA, Electronic Arts. And then Ubisoft says, well, we need to get all of our user data out because we would like to build marketing lists. And then you look at each other and say, oh no. Well, we kind of commingled that data with the EA data because we had this gaming cloud and we were servicing all the gaming customers from it. So this is one of those pitfalls that you have when you learn the hard way. Oh, we actually have to create private instances. And it used to be easy. You remember? I remember you had to drive a physical box in a car to a place that usually was a weird square building somewhere, in this case, San Francisco, that has no windows. And there's just a weird security door, and you go in and it's called a co-location facility, or a colo for short. And you walk in, it's like the movies. It's just boxes as tall as you in rows. And it's and fans. And there's some crazy guy whose eyes have almost all turned white, who's in there and he's like, which number of row are you looking for? He kind of points to you and you install it and start jacking in your wires, and now you're installed and it's private. Why? Because I just brought it and plugged it in.
Hardware and software. I mean,
so now Apple is saying, hey, there's this thing called a cloud, the iCloud. They literally don't have to change anything physically, because today you can create private virtual servers. No one has to drive the physical box anymore. So when they say, our iCloud is now going to become private, to me, it's one of those great magic tricks of marketing. Because if I know Apple and they're advanced and, everyone's trying to play catch up to them, then they probably already have virtual versions of iCloud running anyway. It's just now they're going to go ahead and talk about it and let everyone else, put everyone on notice. So again, like that article from just a couple hours ago, they're putting everyone on notice, right? Now they're putting the consumers on notice. Like, hey, we told you were going to be able to buy access to this and pay for it in September. And now they're saying, sorry, we need all the money now. That to me is they're really getting on sides with this whole idea of separating everyone's user data and everyone's financial data.
I think that's super interesting what you just said, separating your personal data from your financial data. I'm going to need to own them. I should have the keys to both. I, as the human in the bridge, the encryption between my personal photos when I'm taking a picture on my yacht and you can see me sipping a martini with my fancy jewelry on, right? You can see all the things, but I don't want that commingled with the receipts that say I'm in debt. And you can see that now my hardware life doesn't match my software life. And from a financial perspective, think about that of like, that's private, right? That's mine. I'm the key. I'm the encryption. I'm the human. I'm the only person who knows the truth of that. And if all of a sudden that is in a private secure cloud owned by one of the 4 big tech companies, that puts them in a very, very precarious situation. And I think we know Apple, they're going to get out ahead of this. Now, that being said, I have seen, and we could talk a little bit about some of the OpenAI news. I don't know if you saw the new appointment to the OpenAI board. Did you catch this?
I only caught it because you sent it to me. This is really interesting.
Yeah. So this is the new OpenAI appoints former top U.S. cyber warrior Paul Nakasone to its board of directors. So he is straight up what is U.S. cyber warrior and intelligence official? I mean, cyber warrior. Holy shit. He is the former head of the NSA, guys. The former head of the NSA is now on the board of OpenAI. And what did Apple do? They partnered. They announced a partnership with OpenAI. Now, Sam Altman didn't take the stage. I heard some of this, Apple, they're not going to let him be the hero of this. Apple Intelligence
they
is the hero.
Don't want him. They don't want him even saying the word artificial intelligence. They don't even want him to use the word artificial. Everyone's going to say either Apple Intelligence or AI, and that's just going to leave it at that. And
they stole the narrative.
They stole the narrative. And you know how Sammy Altman likes to get up on stage and just start spewing all kinds of interesting ideas of what might happen in the future, even saying things like, I think that AI is going to kill us soon. And when you have someone saying something like that, you keep them behind the curtain and you bring out the cyber warrior, who is a sage and sober-minded veteran of battling hackers and cyber terrorists. And he's going to ensure that everyone's speaking on brand, on the talking points, and not suggesting anything to even the hint that this AI thing that's local on your phone is going to do something bad to you. Like, we can't have anyone suggesting Chicken Little, sky is falling, ever. To me, Sam Altman's Chicken Little. They need to keep him boxed up in the coop.
I cannot believe, like, being able to put all this together, that it's like we're going to have to keep unpacking this. But if I just could not have predicted at any point that Apple was going to let OpenAI in the back door here. And they're not. They're letting them in the front door. They did it at WWDC, and they did it now with the former head of the NSA as the adult in the room. I mean, it just really makes you see that the apparatus around these public or private companies, whichever way. I mean, Apple's public. I mean, they're a publicly traded company, but who really owns them? Who really owns them? This is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. In that, is Tim Cook walking this tightrope of like, we have your data so secure that even we can't see it? That level of encryption. I just feel like there's some falsehood in there, that there's just no way that that's
There's definitely
possible.
a falsehood. Because when the American military apparatus, or really any position of authority that has to do with the penal system and regulation, when they contact Cupertino and say, we need to see some data in the private cloud of these 3 people of interest, including Sean Diddy Combs and his personal bodyguard and the person who works the front gate at his estate, because we're going to find out whether or not there's a human trafficking ring being run. And the only way to do that is to go into the, quote, private cloud. Now, let's just put a pin in that for a second, because privacy is also something that Apple talks about with a straight face, and everyone who comes up does, right? The military wants you things to be private for you. The military wants the United States' business to be private from the rest of the world. Apple would like things to be private because they want to market to the families and to the parents. Everyone wants to feel really good. But I think privacy is sort of this strata. There's like a stratigraphy of privacy when you actually kind of pull it out and thin it out. Because, let's just say I am the head of a family. And in the way Apple sets it up is you have a head of family, and then you have partner or spouse, or however they list the person who could also be head of the family, other adult. Then they have these other kids, and you can hang off of it, and you can go in and create all these parameters. Well, you talked about the yacht, and what happens on the yacht. Well, maybe I'm the head of the family, or I'm not the head of the family, but I also don't want the family to see anything that happens on my yacht, because maybe there are things that go down on my yacht that I can't show to anyone in the family, my spouse, much less my children. And now you have one button that exists in your cloud. It's called hide, right? There's a button that says hide. You can hide an image or a video. There's not really a way to hide a document, I think, in the same way, but you can hide an image or a video. And then there's a thing called a hidden folder. It's just one little hidden folder where you hide everything that the family is not supposed to see. Well, and I know that as soon as if you get a boat, and as soon as you get that NFT popping, and as soon as I got my new album that I just dropped, and I'm getting my crypto in as a payment, and then I'm working with those guys that I work with in Cyprus, well, now I'm going to need a whole lot more than one folder to hide all of my shenanigans. So now my question is, okay, well, privacy, it exists at this macro level, the way that Apple looks at it. And when you really boil that down, it's not even the human that is the head of that privacy macro umbrella, right? In order to be even named and listed, what do you have to have? Well, you have to have a phone number and a credit card. Now you, the human, are validated as a human in the hardware ecosystem because you have 2 new things, literally 2 strings of numbers, a phone number and a credit card. And of course, what comes with the credit card is your government ID that matches your address to all those things. So your KYC is your fulcrum of privacy that's balancing this insane teetering game of how many photos can you hide, Michael? How many videos can you hide? At what point does the yacht not have enough life vests? Like these are the questions that are going to have to be answered in the metaverse.
I mean, I just think about like Face ID, right? Like it has become so ubiquitous. It is reducing such friction in transactions. I don't have to remember passwords. It's that optic ID. We've gone down this path a couple of times. OpenAI. Oh, dude, now we got to go here. OpenAI tried to do this, right? This was the plan to have this eyeball scanning thing be attached to your AI bot. Now all of a sudden, Siri and my assistant is attached to the human. We're attached at the hip. We are the same. Siri will now be my agent, personalized for me, access to my hidden folder, access to what I need her out there doing and saying, and how I want to show up in that call, and where I want that folder organized, and how, all of the things that Siri with the hardware and the software powered by our Apple intelligence is going to be able to do. And it's going to be tied to my Face ID. So in many ways, Apple may have solved the problem that Sam Altman was trying to solve with the iris scanning. And who better to do that from a narrative perspective than the NSA? I mean, Apple. Bring in Apple.
Well, and that's exactly where. So we talked about this. We said, who in the right mind? And I'm just going to find out where.
I mean, we sound like conspiracy theories, but this is happening.
So it was in episode 52. We discussed this exact thing, which is who in their right mind is going to pay any money, or then we're like, well, maybe they'll make it free. They're just going to send you like a little orb that's going to be plugged in as a quote, a peripheral. And everything about it, as we're even saying it, is laughable. Like, wait, there's a thing that's a peripheral. It's not a keyboard or a mouse, but I'm going to plug it in. And what kind of plug does it use? And it goes into my computer, and I look at it and scans my eyeballs, and I give it to Sam Altman, who's the sometimes on again, off again CEO, founder of a company that's raising money from the Saudi Arabia to build computer chips that might kill us. No, thank you. But then the Apple, we said, they already have all this data. They're already ahead. So I guess to use your metaphor, they let Sammy Altman in the front door. They let him go out the side door with all the Face ID data, and they kept him real far away from the back door because that's where the head of the NSA is guarding everything.
But what about Microsoft?
Oh, they're just
but
so
they're
far behind
now. They're the biggest investor. When you said on again, off again, I started to think about weren't they pulling the puppet strings? Wasn't this a Microsoft play with OpenAI, and aren't Microsoft and Apple sworn enemies? I'm confused now.
Well, maybe that it's Sammy Altman kind of came in the back door, was then moved right to the front and then out, and then Microsoft came in the side because they're like, well, hey, we'll ride with him, but we don't really get to say anything. We just get to make money. Maybe they just decided, look, because they're also members simultaneously in a race of some form or another to create a goggle experience, right? They're also chasing Google and chasing Apple. So the closer that Microsoft aligns itself to the financial futures of Apple, the better off they are, right? They probably couldn't have ever imagined that they would have done a deal with Apple, but they want to get in and get their taste. If you actually go back, like we talk about the partnerships that kind of created the current internet. If you're looking at the 4 American companies who run most of the internet, it's Apple, it's Google, it's now Meta, and then it's Netflix. And I guess Amazon's the 5th. And all of those guys kind of sort of have to work together on some level to continue delivering the experiences that we all expect. But in this case, Microsoft is in a catbird seat, I think, to capitalize literally on the capital, which is as soon as OpenAI goes public, like what happens when they go public? You're buying shares of OpenAI. And what if OpenAI changes its name to Open Apple Intelligence? There's so many different things that could end up happening. And again, it's all about stealing that narrative. All of this is to say that if you can convince as a marketer, and Apple's a good marketer, if you can convince that the American public has in their pocket a device that looks like this today, like a bar of soap, that's a supercomputer, and you can convince everyone that the AI, the Apple Intelligence that's called Siri, runs locally on my device and doesn't talk to other people's AI and sends data to and from a private iCloud that's for my family, and you can convince everybody of all that, well, I think you might have just not only stolen the narrative, but you've printed like the illuminated manuscript to put in the Getty Museum of how it all came to be that AI was owned by California and the American military apparatus.
I mean, I'm reading.
That's what the history books are going to say.
Sam Altman named, quote, a genius masterclass strategist as OpenAI deals with Apple and iPhone outside of its Microsoft partnership. This is from Kevin Okwima. This is crazy to me. Just that he pulled this off. I mean, to your point, like the history books are going to look back on this, that this is an inception point of artificial intelligence. It's been a year. We're 12 months in, maybe a little bit more, because as I always tell the story of writing Christmas poems for my kids using ChatGPT, and that was Christmas of 2023. So, no, 2022. So 2023. I mean, we're coming up on 2 years, But in its infancy,
no, we're
Sam
coming up
Altman,
on 2 years for sure.
Yeah. Sam Altman in his infancy, navigating Microsoft on again, off again, gets comebacks, and then brokers a deal with Apple. We don't know which door he walked in, but it does make me see this guy a lot differently, I think, than I did maybe 6 months ago. That he was able to pull this off. That whatever they've got behind that curtain. And some of that is maybe in front of the curtain, which is they just have the zeitgeist at the moment. It just was it worked. The simple interface, the generative nature of it, it was just new and novel. ChatGPT is now a verb. Like, people think of it. And by the way, in nowhere in this discussion did we talk about Google, except to say that, oh yeah, there was that Gemini event. Oh, there was that thing that they did. And I just, the war is on, and the war chief is working for Apple.
The cyber warrior. Well, but also, I mean, just as we talked about, just talking through this today on the show, it does put into stark relief the events that happened before of the firing, rehiring, or whatever of Sam at the hands or, the behest of people at Microsoft and different things that were happening. It kind of shows maybe a little bit of, okay, there was a knee-jerk reaction that someone had. Someone was pissed off, was political, it was knee-jerk. As soon as it happened, there was a quorum that gathered and hey, we can't, what just happened? We can't do that because there are these conversations that are live. Sorry, you didn't know about it, but we have to have this conversation. We could be pretty far behind if we don't do this or this because he knows this or this or that. Then come back, then whatever, then come back. And then he gets this great negotiating piece, which is, oh, you guys are going to throw me out? I guess you don't want to hear about this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, the other cool thing. And they're like, wait, what'd you say? You said you have a deal with who and whatever? Oh, no, I mean, I could come back. I could, but then I guess I'd have to tell you about the really cool thing we're going to do with, Apple and how we're all going to get rich and or whatever. And then they comes on back in and they realize, I'm sure Microsoft realized, if we don't have this individual, we're going to miss out on everything. And we're going to have to find a way to make it work where we all work together on some level. And as soon as you bring in the American military, like in a not insignificant way, to use a developer parlance, but like, that should not go understated that how important that person coming in is, because what were the last summer, remember, it was your namesake, but not your relative. It was Helen Toner.
Yes, that's right.
Who stood up and said, this is insane. Sam Altman is a crazy person. We're barreling down a path to literally the plot of the movie, The Creator. We're going to end up blowing everybody up by accident. Israel's already using AI in the form of lavender to pick targets against Hamas. Like, what? Slow down. And it was called, what was it called? Something altruism.
Effective altruism.
Effective altruism. And that's like the thing. And somebody just said, you need to stop talking. I'm going to become the head of this thing. And by the way, we're bringing in the guy who's had his finger on the big red button for like the last 2 decades. And he'll make sure that doesn't go down that way. But just please stop blogging about that. We're trying to do a deal with Apple and make everybody feel comfortable about their private cloud and how
you're ruining
the family can only see the hidden folder, and you're ruining it, Helen.
We're waiting for WWDC, Helen. We have to announce it then. Look, I'm going to bring us back to a couple other things to pull this. We just went down, I think, an amazing journey here about Apple stealing the narrative, as we knew they would, as they have to, and as they are the experts. There is nobody better. They're not going to start talking about it unless they're going to win at it. They're not going to enter the conversation unless they are the supreme leader of it. And I will bring it around to a couple of other smaller news announcements in the crypto realm. But take everything we just talked about, take everything about identity, about ownership, about having my face connected to my financial system, what we know Apple is already capable of from a wallet and a transaction perspective, that blending of hardware and software and me being at the center of controlling that. There's 2 things I think I'll get to. One, I want to talk about Gensler and the Ethereum ETFs and what's happening with that. Then you see the SEC's crypto enforcer, so David Hirsch, who was really at the center of a lot of the crypto and cybersecurity unit division enforcement at the SEC. That he left without stating where he's going next. It looks like he just quit today. A senior member of the SEC who was in charge of the crypto asset and cyber unit is gone. And I just found this article I just sent you about how Apple and Google could bring 1 billion users to crypto, and it has nothing to do with Bitcoin or Ethereum, and it has everything to do with the user experience, reducing the friction. People won't even know they're using it. McCann adds, underscoring the importance of integrating crypto into everyday technology in a way that feels natural to users. This is from an article in The Street from Rob Nelson 10 hours ago. The tool to bring mass crypto adoption is already in your pocket. I just am bullish more than I ever have been, knowing that I see the connection. We've been talking about the connection here between AI and blockchain, and how blockchain is and will be a solution in a generative AI world. And if I've got my Siri app out there able to create new content for me, if Siri can do stuff for me, if she can be my agent, which we just spent the first 20 minutes of this talking about why we're going to trust her to go do these things, why she's going to have access to my virtual private cloud. She's going to be able to act as me, be me, sound like me, look like me, and be trusted by me. Then why wouldn't I trust her to deal with my finances? Why wouldn't I trust her to do real-time payment transactions? And all of a sudden now you've got a trusted solution powered by Apple Intelligence running on new updated financial rails powered by blockchain. I just see it happening. I don't know if it's going to happen this summer, on-chain summer, but it's happening right now.
The on-chain summer is happening, and that let's clip that, because what you just said is perfect, because it leads us to this on-chain summer. There's going to be a moment in time, right? Change happens slowly and then all at once. There's going to be a moment in time where things are going to start migrating to the chain. It's going to be, and how they're going to describe it, I don't know. I'm sure Apple will do a great job of marketing the way that this is going to change, but maybe part of, to go back to a point you made earlier of them reducing some of the services that they had, right? We're not going to allow you to pay later for this in the traditional way. Maybe because we know there was a Goldman Sachs, a little bit of a kerfuffle with Goldman Sachs maybe being the wrong, Apple savings partner. They were looking at Chase maybe to switch them out, because maybe Goldman Sachs wasn't as, they had the name, maybe they didn't have the technology or whatever. Maybe part of just rolling that thing back real quick is kind of like the way that all those major crypto companies last year rolled back their whole, what was their model? Like effectively their savings, what they call it, their staking model,
models,
right? You had all these different staking models where they said, oh no, as soon as the regulators came in and said, wait, staking, that sounds a lot like savings, which sounds a lot like a financial product. You don't have the ability to do this. You don't have the right permissions. You're not an administrator of that service yet, sir. So your little dashboard is grayed out. But what if that's just a big precursor to just getting on chain? Like if Apple actually says, no, this is not FDIC. This is not ACH managed. This is not conventional banking lingo tied to credit cards. We're now going to bring our Apple customers, who is a combination of things. The Apple customer is a combination of data. Well, what is it? It's a credit card, it's a driver's license, and it's a set of eyeballs and a face. Well, what if Apple says, well, we like the set of eyeballs in the face. We're okay with the driver's license because we got homie in from the NSA, but we don't want the credit card anymore.
No.
We want the Apple wallet to govern that. And that's this new thing that's on chain. And I'm sorry, but all of your regulation doesn't actually apply to this new thing, because we, Apple, are managing a new blockchain that manages your Apple wallet, that manages your finances, tied to your face, tied to your driver's license. sorry, banks, Goldman Sachs, it was fun. Chase, it was fun. We'll still let you market to our audience. But this new way that Apple pays is 100% on-chain metaverse ready. And they're not ceding a 5% tariff to Visa or MasterCard. That's my prediction. I think they're pulling it back. They're doing a pullback to do a big jump. That's my call. They're going full blockchain.
I mean, I'm looking at, this is from CNET. This is Omar Galaga at 1:12. So we're talking earlier this afternoon, June 17th. 2 years after it was unveiled and less than 2 years after it rolled out in the US, Apple's Pay Later feature is being shut down. The service, offered in cooperation with MasterCard and Goldman Sachs, will be replaced by a built-in feature in the upcoming iOS 18 that allows for third-party companies, such as Affirm, to do the same. But
a marketplace?
It sounds
Is
like
that what you're suggesting?
That's what it sounds like.
A marketplace of micro lenders?
That's what it sounds like, doesn't it?
Wow. That better be on chain. Then we'll know who's who and how much things are moving around. This is very exciting.
It's weird that
shout out to CNET. Shout out to CNET no more.
I mean, a small Monday announcement that we just showed in a much larger picture of Apple Intelligence announcements, changes at the SEC, changes from an enforcement perspective, and a pretty stark projection there from Gary Gensler saying that the ETFs will likely be approved. Like, when has he ever indicated something like that? Like, he's absolutely signaling to the market, this is happening. And if you needed programmable money in order to create that kind of a marketplace, I think that's the kind of thing that would give a company, I mean, it's going to take more than that for somebody like Apple, but that to me is just that's it's not even the signaling to the market it's happening. It's like, oh, you guys already are late because the big guy already showed up and by default would control that marketplace. Who else is going to be able to do Face ID on billions of users immediately with their hardware and software combination? I am pumped for how we just got here. This is wild.
Well, yeah, and like if you want to take it to like the next abstraction, to me it totally kind of it comes into pure view from a sort of crystalline view from before, which is it's just another app on someone's home screen. Apple's already demonstrated that there is an app store environment, and they tell you when an app is not allowed to be there. We chronicled in our show the epic fights literally between Apple and Epic Games about in-game purchases and what the fees are for that, and when you can, no more bait and switches in the App Store. This is a cool free app. Wait a second, my credit card's being charged, and Apple's winnowing down those criminals. But now what I think is happening is saying, okay, look, we've just cleared this out and created a new platform for you. There's been this thing before called the App Store. But now there's a new thing. It's just a slightly different flavor of this ice cream. It's called the Financial App Store. And now Fidelity and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, their apps are there. They've been there. But now, gosh, look, there's a litany of private banks who created these apps. And as long as they qualify, against these certain metrics, yeah, you can be there alongside. Here's Lending Tree. Here is GoFundMe. Here is Michael Toner, who happens to have 10 Bitcoin, loaning it out to people. And as long as you qualify, well, now microloans could suddenly become that community ecosystem, the community financial system that Apple leans on. Because as it is right now, what else do they lean on? The community for referrals, the community for ratings and reviews, the community for all these things. But now will they rely on the community to financially fund the community? As long as they get their 30 cents on the dollar, or whatever their tariff is going to be, why would they care? And again, the blockchain will create a level-ish playing field so small guys and big guys can come together the same way that today in the App Store, you and I could create an app and throw it up there the same way that Epic Games does. And we each have a fair chance, depending on how much money we want to spend to market it. But this is what we're seeing, the democratization of micro-lending. Is that happening in front of our eyes and we're not even seeing it behind the words in these articles? This is kind of making my mind hurt a little bit. This is going to be wild. This will be a wild summer.
And they're doing it under the stealing the narrative of AI. And again, the last 7 minutes, we've talked about the wallet. Apple Wallet, it won't even need a rebrand. It already exists. The magic trick there of all of a sudden inside of that wallet and my little card pops up. It looks like a credit card. It sounds like a credit card. It smells like a credit card, and it works like one too. I can buy anything with it. And what's on the back end doesn't really matter. They're not going to call it crypto. Apple will steal the blockchain narrative. There's a big prediction. I'll make that a 2 to 4 year prediction. That here in 2024, I think by the time you get to 2028, that narrative will have been stolen by Apple, and that whole conversation around crypto, blockchain, NFTs, it'll just be Apple Wallet.
and Siri will have full access. So when we're out there on the beach, and you'll just hear a, "Hey, Michael, your flight to Barbados leaves in 3.5 hours. The amount of ribs and margaritas you've ordered at Coco's is going to put you at 45 minutes before." I mean, she's going to get in our ears and just start letting us know, like, "Hey, I've seen down the blockchain, and there's like a few things I need to tell you about because you're about to get an overdraft fee. But don't worry, we can solve all this. Just put on your Vision Pro and go talk to your virtual banker."
Oh man,
it's happening. This is all happening.
On-chain summer is here. This has been a pleasure. It's good to catch up on big announcements from Apple. Stay tuned. This summer is going to be wild as we head into the back half of June, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again next week.
We'll do it again. And let's keep an eye on SEC and Gary Gensler for next week. Because, and this is what we'll leave the audience with, is Gary Gensler, it seemed like, we talked about this, was strong-armed into approving the Bitcoin ETFs by some big bank type guys. The BlackRock and Fink, Fidelity, a few others, right? It kind of seems like those same guys are strong-arming him in that ETF because he was not trying to approve them. And suddenly something happened behind the scenes. Like you said, we'll leave it here. But like that, he comes out and for the first time ever says something like, "Oh, I think this is likely going to happen before the end of summer." When has he ever said anything like that? I mean, either he's the puppet or he is some insane mastermind who's playing a game with all of us. I just don't know, but it does feel like the fix is in and the big guys are going to make a boatload of money off this next ETF. Let's put a pin in that, but let's talk about corruption of ETF approvals next time as we start.
I'm going to go check that ETF calendar. We will keep an eye on it. We'll do it again. Thank you, sir.
Talk to you next week.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join us next week for more news and all things Web3. Check, please.